there's moments in life where you just got to shut up and just go for it.
Welcome back to Life Worth Chasing. I'm your host, Chase Maher, and this show is about helping entrepreneurs build their business around their dream lifestyle. Homies, back again. Another one. We got my good friend, Matt Davies, one of the top real estate agents in San Diego. He's an investment-minded agent. We talk about highest and best use of land development deals, how he finds his deals, how he scored a triplex from a hedge fund and did the Burr model on it and turned it into a little mini hotel Airbnb, what his plans for the future are. And we get super technical on some development and building terms and how it all works and how it all gets together. So if you're an agent or anybody that's looking to get into development, or you're looking to work on Airbnb, or you're just looking to start building generational wealth from your active income, this is an episode for you. So welcome to the show, Matt Davies. So Matt, I wanted to bring you on the show. I actually asked you a couple months ago. We never got around to it. So I'm super stoked to have you on now. And it's probably even a better time to have you on now because you've done a couple more deals since then and gained even more experience. And we've actually become even closer of friends. So I think the chemistry will be a little bit better than it would have been a couple months ago. I always ask everybody so we can straight hear it from you. Tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, so they can sort of understand who they're hearing from.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Super excited to be here. My name is Matt Davies. I'm a local broker, San Diego. And this is my 5th year in real estate. Before real estate, I was in medical device sales. Before that, I went to school for music and traveled around with a band playing trumpet. Kind of fell into doing real estate and got really interested early on in the investing side of it as well. So listened to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts and stuff like that. When I started out early on, it's always been kind of my ship's been pointed towards doing more investment stuff. So I've recently started doing that. I do this year, I've done 34 sides in real estate sales, which is cool. And I've used the majority of that to fund real estate investment stuff and trying to be a little creative, which has been really fun from a, tax perspective, mortgage perspective, and construction and remodeling and just, multifaceted. So that's kind of my, me in a box.
Yeah, man. And I'm really impressed because you sort of run like your own solo team. You're not one of those people that is trying to build a big team and act like you're some, super advanced powerhouse agent team. You focus on your niche. You're the best at it. And you actually focus in like a general geographic area. And you probably do more multifamily development deals than anybody in that area. Can you tell me a little bit about how you sort of zeroed in on niching down? Because I think any entrepreneur, whether in real estate or not, can benefit from whatever your answer is of like why you sort of chose to do that.
That's a great question. And it took a few years to figure out, but I'm in 100% agreement with you. There's way more, they say the riches are in the niches, right? And doubling down on an area and kind of throwing I think about it like visually, right? It's like you're throwing a stake in the ground and you're like, this land is my land, right? Which is what I've done with North Park. I kind of stumbled into the area. I didn't even like it at first, but I got some momentum and I just kind of started saying, I specialize in North Park. I remember there's one distinct time where I lost a listing to someone because they said they were an area specialist. Like the seller told me, well, we went with someone who's a neighborhood specialist. And I was like, what is that? Do they have a pin that says neighborhood specialist that was given to them by the neighborhood or something? So I kind of like took that one to heart. But I've been able to get a lot better results going deep, not wide. And one key ingredient of that is going deep on the data. You can't be a jack of all trades and a master of none. I mean, you simply can't be a specialist in everything, right? New agents, new investors are like, oh yeah, I do multifamily and luxury and single family houses and flips and all this stuff. So I've kind of chosen like, this is what I do. And then there's everything else. And, maybe I can handle some of it, but I'm really focused on this. So
yeah, I mean, I see you do, I've seen you do a couple deals in Orange County, a couple deals over here, some residential stuff. But for the most part, what I know you for is just double-ended another 18-unit development deal, just double-ended another 24-unit development deal. about how, I mean, you've told me a little bit about how you picked it, but start telling me sort of like the research behind it. Like how much do you study behind the scenes about these development projects? And then we can sort of segue into now you're starting to take your commission earnings and do your own deals.
Sure. Yeah. So how I kind of stumbled into it was interesting. I was working at this restaurant before I was in real estate, and I actually kind of got into real estate because there was a bunch of these guys that were hanging around, having 2-hour-long lunches and driving Range Rovers. And I'm like, what is it that you guys do? Right. So I sat down with a couple of them. I won't name their names here. I think I told you who they were, but they're still active guys and they're good guys. And they're like, we're real estate brokers. And I kind of figured out how the compensation structure works and whatnot. And at the same time I was doing that, I was working at this restaurant in La Jolla, and I was meeting all these people that were pretty high power, and I didn't know exactly what they did. Lots of wealth is created in real estate, obviously. So when you go where there's rich people, there's almost, without fail, going to be people in real estate around. So there was someone that I met there, and he was a real estate developer, and his son wanted to get into a real estate, development deal in North Park. So I kind of sought it as an opportunity to go, sell a property, make a commission. So obviously new in the business, I'm not going to let somebody buy something that's not a good deal. Right. So I went really deep on learning the code, and I found kind of resources, and I talked to people, and I looked up, the zoning and kind of started to familiarize myself with the zoning map. Where's the good zones, and then I started to think critically, if I'm going to find a development deal, I'm going to be looking for small houses on big lots, right? Because the way that I can make a win-win scenario is probably through going to someone and saying, hey, how about if I pay you more than your house is worth, right? Because the zoning's not worth it to the little old lady that's lived there for 75 years because she's just got a really big backyard and that's been cool, but there's also an apartment complex next door to her. So I started seeking out these things I'm not a big technology guy, to be honest. I started kind of like hand curating these things. And naturally, when you're not a big technology guy, you have to pick a small sample set. So I picked University Avenue to Oklahoma Boulevard to Park Boulevard to like Boundary, which is just kind of a box in North Park that has really favorable zoning. They used to call it Apartment Village, actually. And I started mailing these people. I started calling these people. I started door knocking on these people. I started looking at the tax rolls and seeing if they're absentee owners. I started looking what they paid for them, what their tax basis is, what kind of mortgage they had they refinanced it recently, how many existing units are on the property. And I just kind of started carving out like my targets, right? So I sent some mail to someone. This is like my first deal, back to what we were kind of talking about, my first real estate development deal. And I got in contact with somebody who wanted to raise money for a development deal. And I said, okay, well, my clients are developers, it's probably not going to work. We'd be interested in just like a straight out sale. And it took some massaging, but a lot of in-person meetings, and we eventually came to terms on a price. So this was also my first over $1 million deal. So we came to 1.1 million, and it's cool because it's being built right now. It's almost actually done. It's 18 units, 60 feet high, and nobody knows what the hell happened, right? Because like, holy smokes, like nobody realized that you could do that on these lots. I learned a lot by being a fly on the wall in a lot of different conversations, whether it was like an architect or a structural engineer or a developer or a finance guy or something. For some reason, I was just on the call or in the room. So then I started hearing all the complex problems, or actually maybe simple problems that are seemingly complex, that everybody's running into on these things. So I kind of became valuable because I'd had this unique perspective that not everybody else gets into. If you're a developer and you want to build something, you're probably going to have a mentor. However, you're probably going to come across a bunch of stuff and have to figure it out yourself. So I watched like 5 different guys figuring 5 different problems out at the same time. So when the next one came up, I said, oh, you just do this. So people started calling me like, hey, Matt, how do you figure this out? And all of a sudden I'm kind of like a development consultant more than I am like a broker. And then people start calling me and say, hey, what's this worth? What can you do on this? And I have like a little bit of knowledge about, well, I know a lot about a little, but I know within that a lot that I know about a little, I know a little bit about a lot. Did that make sense? Like yeah, it was backwards.
Yeah, totally. It almost sounds like, you went from being an agent, because the money was there. Then you realize like the niche was there and the development deals in this one area. Then you built a ton of relationships with architects and other brokers and consultants and private money people. And now fast forward, like I recognize you as somebody who dominates that space over there. You have a lot of great contacts. You have a lot of knowledge. And now you're starting to actually get your feet wet and do your own deals. So talk about like, how did that leap happen from being one of the top agents in the area, definitely the top agent in that specific area, learning from all these people, learning from their mistakes, and then now you're starting to do your own deals? Like, was that scary? Like, how did you sort of get past the first couple hiccups, or where most people would get stuck and 20 years later, they never done their own deal?
Totally. Yeah. And I guess if you pick a specific enough niche, it's pretty easy to dominate it, right? Like if you pick something really small and specific, you're like, oh, I did three deals. I'm the man, right? Yeah. So I sold, several of these like over and over again. And me getting into investing in these kind of was I always wanted to, but it was a byproduct of me selling these things to people. And then, I originally got into this because I wanted to sell somebody. I wanted to find undeveloped land, get the listing, double end it, and then have the builder build it, build 5 units, and then I sell 5 units, right? So one listing turns into 7. It just made sense to me from a efficiency standpoint.
For sure.
What ended up happening instead of that was I'd sell them a really good deal that was very buildable. And then the market was kind of like climbing like this. And I still do believe it is kind of like this, maybe not at such a slant, but they would just say, well, if we can sell it and make 300 grand, like, then let's just sell it. Right. So we'd buy something and we'd put conceptual design on it, basically handhold somebody and spoon feed them and kind of come up with a design. And I had an architect that I was like working with that would kind of help with that and explaining that. So what I would do is I'd find a lot and then I'd kind of do the mental chomping on it to show people what the highest and best use is. So if someone says, oh, you could build 10 townhouses on this, I say, well, no, you can't, because, each garage, 2-car garage is 20 feet wide and you got to have a 1-foot wall in between each of those. So there's 22. So if you draw it out and you have a 140-foot wide lot and you want to put 10 garages like this, 10 times 20 is 200 feet, right? So there's all these kind of like feasibility things. And if you say, okay, there's a 5-foot setback and then there's a 10-foot setback here, so you're actually working within this and you can really feasibly only do 4 or 5. So I was saving my clients from overpaying when we were buying this thing because they're thinking, oh, you build 10 townhouses. No, there's physically not enough space here. Like, sure, the zoning allows you to build that many units, but you can't physically fit them like on a site map. So
I want to unpack that for anybody listening right now. Imagine you have like a small house on a large lot in a very condensed area. And typically that lot will be rezoned so that you can add an apartment building or split up the lot multiple times or add a bunch of townhouses. And what Matt's talking about here is just because the zoning says, 1 unit per 2,000 square feet and it's a 10,000 square foot lot doesn't mean you can put 5 units on it. You have setbacks a certain amount of feet from the next lot. You have different zoning metrics where things can only be but so high. They can only be but so long. And so Matt's really figured out this niche and understood and become the consultant. He's become the expert. Any entrepreneur listening, the more you become the expert in your field, the more you'll get referrals, the more you'll get looked after. He's really figured out the niche to where now he is made the name for himself and he's saving people and making people a lot of money.
Yeah. So there's, it's funny, like what you said, there's like economic parameters on these things too. Like if you want to go and say, oh, well, you can build 100 feet high, right? And it's like, well, if you want to build 100 feet high, you have to do what's called one of the ways to do it is like steel, right? One is like a type 1A construction, which is like fire resistant, which is like podium. So it's like concrete on top of a concrete on top of concrete on top of concrete, because you can only go up to like 4 stories with wood framing. So as you go vertical, things get exponentially more expensive. And just because you can doesn't mean you should, which is kind of a funny thing. So there's all these kind of like little metrics that are kind of steering you towards something. If somebody says, oh, I want to do this, oh, I want to build townhomes. I say, okay, well, are you excited about the 10-year build reliability that you're going to have when you sell that? They're like, oh no, I didn't even think about that. So there's all these different metrics And it's kind of one of these, it's an interesting thing I'm running into a lot actually, and this will segue us into talking about the deal that I did recently. There's a lot of things that you need to know about a little bit. And a lot of these, like a lender, just for example, like a realtor and an escrow officer and a title officer and a lender, like they all got to work together to make this thing work, right? And sometimes they're not all on the same page. So it's even harder when you're an investor because you got to get a contractor on the same page. You got to get a realtor on the same page. You got to get like an architect, a structural engineer. You got to know a little bit about all these things so that you can prevent yourself from saying, well, why are you doing it this way? Because the architect doesn't really care how you're going to build it per se. He just says, this is what it is. And here's the structural calcs. And yes, this will take this load. And the builder, the guy that's actually going to go bring this into reality, says, okay, well, if you take this down 6 inches, it'll save you $700,000. But the architect doesn't know anything about that, it's just crazy to me because all these people within the same field kind of just stay in their own lane. And a lot of them are kind of like the analytical brain and aren't great at communication with other people. So, which is where people like you and I come together to kind of conduct the circus and hopefully put together a deal that's going to be fruitful and financeable and stuff like that. So I made a bunch of money for a bunch of people and I said, shit, why don't I do this myself?
Yeah. Well, no, you're clearly good at it. And I appreciate all the super technical stuff. And, if you want to check out Matt's Instagram or reach out to him for even more technical stuff, I'm sure he'll be happy to do that. But for the sake of the show and the listeners, I want to sort of segue into like, how are you sort of targeting and finding these deals?
Just looking at a lot of data. And not in a way that is really detail oriented. Well, it's not really like seeking an objective. I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to mail all the absentee owners in this place. Like I'm making my own custom lists on like parameters. So for example, I'm going to find a 7,000 square foot lot because that's what I want in this area on a map with this zone that's flat, that has alley access. So I'm really kind of picking 100, that doesn't have a lot of square footage. And I'm not saying, I just looked from the aerial view on Google Maps and I'm like, that's worth looking at. There's an old gross roof on that thing. Maybe I can get a deal on it. So I'm just kind of curating these things myself and just kind of really looking at my targets. And then I kind of attack them 5 different ways instead of just calling a list from a title rep, which is not a bad idea, but it's more targeted and curated.
So you're sort of stacking curated lists with specific data that will be somebody that's more likely to fit, like their lot is more likely to fit what you're looking for.
The other thing I do is I just drive up and down the streets. I drive a lot. And when I talk on my phone, I walk the neighborhoods. I drive the neighborhoods. People must think I'm trying to case the place because I'm like looking and I'm like, very observant. If there's a pod that gets dropped or something, I'm like, what's going on over there? Right. I see a pod and I'm like, damn it, the deal's done.
I love that, man. I love that. So speaking of walking up and down the street, I know you were surfing a little bit on Google Street and looking at tax records and stuff. Tell me how you came across this home run of a triplex that you bought recently. And now it's a dominating Airbnb little mini hotel for you.
Yeah. I'm sure my neighbor would love to hear you say it's a mini hotel. So I was doing exactly what I was talking about. I made like a curated list and I was actually kind of had my assistant curating this list. I taught her what I was looking for. I said, small house, big lot in this zone, so here's the zoning map, and the zoning, it goes up and down and sideways and backwards. So it's not, there's a little bit of rhyme and reason to it, but not much. You kind of have to memorize it. So I had to go look it up and I said, okay, give me when did they buy it? What did they buy it for? What's their name? What's their mortgage amount? Just a couple kind of like key indicators, right? Like, is it in an LLC? Is it so I can look at owner's name. And if they have an age, it's on the entity, you can see their age. Because if they're 90, they're days away from, potentially being in an urgent need to sell their house. You never know. When you get that old, you fall, things happen really quick. So I got this list that she made for me and I looked at it and I'm looking at this mortgage and it's like $147 million mortgage on this duplex. And I'm like, okay, here's when I compile data and you look at data and something sticks out, right? It's an outlier. So what the hell is this? So if I look at $147 million mortgage on a property, I know that it's probably owned by a real estate fund. If it's owned by a real estate fund, they're either going to buy it and hold it, or they're going to buy it and sell it, right? Fix it, sell it. So I drove by it and it's like covered in like, there's crazy shit. And they'd owned it for like 4 months. And I, park my car, I get out, I kind of look at it, and there's all these crazy notices from some weird guy, like all over the place that say, do not enter. So there's a holdover tenant and he's being evicted and there's a sheriff lockout. So I go on Corporation Wiki or something like that. I find out the name of the fund that owns it. I call them and I'm like, hey, can I talk to your acquisitions guy? Right. And I didn't know, but a bunch of my colleagues were running after this thing and nobody ever told me about it. And I just totally got lucky. And it was also when my wife was like 9 months pregnant. And so I saw that they bought it out of foreclosure. They bought it at the courthouse steps for $629,000. And I was like, holy smokes, right? Because I know what it is. It's a very standard size lot size and zoning, and it's in a great area. And the last one I sold that was just like that sold for $1.3 million. So I call this guy, I talk to the acquisitions manager, I get him on the phone, whatever. I say, hey, are you interested in selling that property? Will you sell it to me as is? And he's pretty much business as usual. He's like, well, let me get you a number, So he shuffles some papers around. He comes back and he goes, $750 now or $850 after I fix it. And I'm like, in that moment, in that split moment, and I was prospecting for listings. I was really prospecting for listings or opportunities to sell my guys. I go, I'll buy it now. Right. So he's like, all right, whatever. And he's like, and he's like, well, there's no commission in this. So you got to add that on top. I'm like, no, that's fine. I'll buy it. I'm going to buy it. Right. And I literally he said $750. I'm like, I'll buy it. Right. Because the last one I sold was 1.3. So I kind of very quickly move and get an offer together and, have his person represent me or whatever. And I get the thing under contract. My wife is 9 months pregnant, right? So I tie it up and there's some drama, there's always drama. Some of the guys that are going after it find out that I have it and, they tell the guy that I'm trying to wholesale it, which I wasn't, but I would have. Anyways, my wife has our kid and then 10 days later I close on it. So I bought it and I was calling hard money lenders and I was like, hey, will you give me a loan? And they're like, yeah, what is it? And they're like, I'm like, it's this. And they're like, how much equity are you going to put in? And I'm like, none. They're like, and why is that? I'm like, because it's worth way more than I'm buying it for. And they're like, and I showed them, they're like, oh, okay. So I talked to a few guys and, bad deal, decent deal. I just took the decent deal from my good friend and client.
Decent deal, my ass. It was a pretty good deal you got from the lender.
No. Well, yeah, no, I got a really good well, that's another good piece of it. I could have haggled a little bit on my hard money terms, but my buddy who gave me the loan, he's never beat me up on commission. And he's, so I'm right. Look, man, I don't really care. I'm buying this thing. I got a good deal. Right. Anyway, and with 100% equity. So I literally bought my first investment property with no money down.
No money down in a great area, sourced it yourself. And tell me a little bit about what did you want to do with the deal initially and how did that sort of change?
So I'm a closet analytical person. I'm very analytical. And one thing that I'm not analytical with is technology, because I've just decided not to go down the rabbit hole. Because when I go down the rabbit hole, it's see you in 2 weeks, I just go deep dive. So I went deep dive on this with what was my strategy going to be? Because I sold several of these to people and we didn't do a damn thing and put a new rendering of something and sold it for 1.3 million. So I said, well, if I sell this thing right now for 1.3 million and I, make $500,000, I'm gonna have a pretty massive tax liability, and I have a client and we've been drinking beer and talking a lot about taxes, and he'd kind of been teaching me stuff, and it's something that I haven't dug deep into. So it was really fresh in my mind. So I was like, well, how can I avoid paying taxes? He says, well, you can you can hold it as a long-term hold, and you can 1031 exchange at some point in the future, right? So, by the way, when I bought this thing, I bought it like sight unseen on the inside. So it was 2 units, and then it ended up actually being like a third bootleg, which was pretty rad. There's a 1-car garage that was already like set up as a little granny flat. So I thought I was getting 2 units, and then I realized I was getting 3, and I was like just elated, right? So first, like somebody offered me like 900 for it in escrow, and I was like, nah, I like that's a cool offer and stuff, but then I'm gonna have to pay tax on 150, like a ton of tax. So I closed on it with the intent of fixing up the structure a little bit, like spending a little bit of money on it, and then setting up an Airbnb, because I'd Airbnb'd my apartment and saved with my now wife. When we were dating, we'd go like house sit for her parents and watch their dogs when they're out of town, and we'd Airbnb our house, and every penny we made from Airbnb, we'd put into a separate bank account, and that's how we saved our money to buy our first house. Also with like our personal residence. So I was like, I'm familiar enough with it. People are really into it, and they're raving fans about it. So like, let's do this. So it'll be fun. It's right next to the Lafayette Hotel. It's in an area that's kind of close to downtown. So I intended to put, X amount of dollars into it. I ended up putting more than double that into it. YOLO. first deal, everybody, you're going to spend more and it's going to take longer, right? Pretty general.
So let's fast forward now. You refinanced it, right?
Yeah. So that was a big thing that I kind of pre-planned in the beginning, the way the note was going to be recorded, because I knew I could get an appraisal and I'll be really concise with this. I knew I could get an appraisal for around 1.2, 1.3 as a duplex, like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. It's very, subjective. So I had my buddy give me like a little bit more. So I had a mortgage amount of like 800,000. And then I put cash on top of that into it. So my nut in it was just like my cash. And I kept the mortgage amount at like 800, because I know that for real estate investments, to get the best terms, you're going to need to have 30% equity. So they recently changed the lending guidelines. You used to have to wait 12 months to get what's called new value, where you fix a property up, because they just look at the property tax roll and see that you purchased it for 750, and they say, I'm not going to give you a loan for 800 on it. You just bought it 4 months ago. So they changed the guidelines. So now if you do substantial work to it and somebody appraises it for this, you can get a loan for new value. However, if I just bought it cash and my guy didn't like originate a note, I would have had to pay extra on my mortgage for like takeout, because it'd be a cash out refi. So I just wiped out my hard money loan with a refinance, because it appraised for like 1.2, like 1.19 or something like that. So I had 30%. I had 30% equity in it from the value that I built, and I bought it right. So talked to a bunch of different lenders. One lender's like, you can't do it. Like big guy, like knows what he's doing, originates probably $100 million of loans plus every year. He's like, you can't do it because this, and like he wasn't up on his guidelines. So it's like a lot of researching, a lot of talking to people, and I set this up as deferred interest payments too, from my buddy who gave me the deal. So I was never like late on payments, which is another qualifier that so I was talking to the hard money guy and like a traditional mortgage guy, because the hard money guy was going to originate my acquisition funds, and then the traditional finance guy was going to wipe that out and put like long-term amortizing debt on it. So like orchestrating those two things and understanding those things, so that I started from the beginning, structuring it correctly, was like, I was on pins and needles the whole time, because I didn't want to sell it right away, because you pay 30-40% tax on that, and money comes, money goes,
Right. So you refinanced it, got a lower rate, lower payments, and now you're running it as an Airbnb. So like, share with us some of the sort of things you're learning from running like this 3 separate unit little, I'm going to call it like a little mini boutique hotel kind of setup. Like, what are you learning from that? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And are you going to do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. So my out of the gate realizations is the smaller units are better for a couple of reasons. They're low impact in the neighborhood. Your neighbors are not going to whine and complain about someone, like a couple that's going to come and like drink wine and hang out and then like, pass out, or like they're coming in town to see a band or something like that. It's just, when you have the bigger ones, so I have a 3-bed, 2-bath, I have a studio, and I have a 1-bed, 1-bath. The studio is, I call it the boom boom room, but it's actually tiny living in North Park. It's like the coolest one, and it's always rented. It's super cheap. I probably make like $2,500 a month in total on it, and I would rent it long term for like $1,400 or $1,300. It's cheaper to clean. My cleaning on that's like $40, and the lady's super happy because she can turn it over in 30 minutes. So it's kind of like a win-win situation for everybody in terms of the neighborhood impact, cleaning lady, management of it, just dealing with issues. It's just easy. The bigger one is like, you're going to want to command a higher price. And just like in real estate sales, the higher the price, the smaller the buyer pool. So the higher the price on your rental, the smaller the people that can afford it. And in turn, that's going to lead to more vacancy, and vacancy is not good. So you have to lower the price. So I'm renting my 3-bed, 2-bath for whatever I can, because right now I'm in the phase of collecting reviews. I'm now a super host. So every time like something happens, and at the very beginning, I was going every day and observing and watching and talking to the cleaning ladies. We got our little like maid's closet all dialed in with labels and stuff like that, just so that everything is like a well-oiled machine. So I started figuring out like certain things, like somebody wouldn't get this, or so I'd just go to like the pain point and I'd solve that. And then I'd be like, okay, everybody keeps asking me for early check-in. Oh my God, it's so annoying. So I just put in absolutely no early check-in. I'm sorry. Like it's just a rule. So like read the rules. It's not like I'm a dick, but I don't have time for that. I had some lady last night that couldn't figure out how to, it's funny now having like 60, 70 people, guests that have come through. Somebody's like, where's the Wi-Fi? And I'm like, I don't know. All 75 other people figure it out. Like I'll tell you what it is. I'm not, it's a waste of time to be like vindictive about that, but it's funny that you get a lot of stupid questions. Some woman was like speaking to me in Spanish last night. She couldn't figure out the check-in instructions, and I'm like, everybody else figured it out. Like you just can't fix stupid. You're dealing with the general public, so it's cool. But yes, I would do it again.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Like, would you do it again? Because let me ask you this: if you rented all 3 units long term, what would your gross be?
I think my gross would be like probably like $6,900, and my mortgage is $5,400.
Gotcha. And so, what's your gross with the Airbnb?
So far, like slow winter months since I've been doing it, my gross is like $10,500.
And that'll probably be $15,000 in the summer, right?
I think, yeah, potentially even more. I think one of my other friends says like come January, it's going to be way easier. There's going to be a lot better. So I'm at like 93, 94% occupancy, and I'm being really active about lowering my prices and checking out my competition. And it's always sparkling clean. Like I'm doing a good job, right? I'm being on top of it. So I think it's a lot of work, but another reason why you want to, as a real estate professional, there's something in the tax code. Maybe I'm not even educated enough to speak on this yet, but I was with my tax guy today, and he said, if you are a real estate professional, AKA you work, 720 hours or something a year in real estate, you can depreciate. I think this is it. Like you can accelerate depreciation on short-term capital improvements, so something like that along those lines, because I don't have a management company doing it. Like I'm managing it, but really the cleaning ladies are managing it. I'm like, hey, take the trash can, do this, do that. So I think it's a really good cog in a investment strategy that I'm kind of formulating, which is buy something, buy a really deep discount deal. I mean, when you come across those good ones, because some of them, there's a whatever 5, 6, 7, 8% return in them, and you just sell them, get rid of them. It's a condo, it's whatever, just like sell it, do it. But if you get a really, really good one and you don't want to like pay the big tax on it and you don't need the money from it right now, hold it long term defined as a year and a day, and then start looking for replacement properties and then sell it and 1031 exchange the proceeds. And as brokers, we can sell it ourselves and save a commission, listing side commission. You could even double end it and save even more, but then you can roll that into up to 3 properties, right? Or you can take some boot, right? Like take some profit from it. So I am kind of doing it again on another property. I was with my tax guy and he was like, you should really just hold this one again too for like a year and a day, because you're just going to get smoked on like taxes. And the other great thing about holding property long-term is depreciation. And as a real estate professional, you can use depreciation to offset your tax liability from earning commission checks. And it's like you're showing a big loss and it's totally legal. Like it's in the tax code. It's one of the benefits of owning real estate. And you just can't do that if you're flipping, like if you're flipping, you're paying ordinary income, it's short-term capital gains. So preservation of money or preservation of like deal, like what do what's your long-term strategy? So my long-term strategy is pull $300,000-$500,000 out of this deal and then split that into two, and try and do the same thing somewhere else. And in the meantime, build my skill set on ground up construction, other opportunities, look for really good deals, because I could put something in escrow for a long period of time or something and then quick sell this thing, or I could do a reverse exchange into something that I found that's amazing. Start kind of like, they call it swap till you drop, right? You just swapping properties, never really paying your long-term capital gains. You're paying it. And then the thing that's beautiful about that is if you get a property and all of a sudden you have, $1 million of equity or $2 million of equity, you can refinance it, take, 70% loan out on it. And when you refinance it, and this is how rich people get rich. This is how wealthy people get wealthy, not rich people. There's rich and there's wealthy, right? Wealthy people refinance their investments. And if you're refinancing your investments, that is not taxable income. You take out $1 million, and that is not taxable income. And then you still have the principal being paid down by your tenants. And I actually want to get into commercial stuff, 5+, because the debt is much more favorable. You get cheaper interest rates.
And you can do more of it. You don't get capped out on like how many loans you can do under your name, Matt Davies. So for sure, man, I think we have similar goals in that respect. So as we're sort of wrapping up here, I'd love to hear like what your direction is of being an agent and being an investor moving forward. Now that you've gotten your feet wet more than once, like how are you going to balance that? What's your strategy there?
Yeah. And I've been, year end coming, I've been spending a lot of time kind of thinking and reflecting on that. And we should totally get together and kind of talk about where we're pointing our ships, because you're a like-minded guy. And, a lot of my old friends it's like, you can't have conversation with people that are, not doing stuff like this. You can't have relevant conversation with people unless they're doing it. So I've seen a few people go full-time into investing, and then you get into this place where you have to buy and you have to sell in order to like make profits. And I really like the way that things have unfolded for me, because I started, as an agent, and like, that's how I make money and that's what I do. And it also sharpens, it gives me, the fly on the wall, and I get to see a lot of deals, walk a lot of deals, sell a lot of deals, track a lot of deals. I work in real estate all day, every day. So, I mean, my main focus is like, I'm a broker, right? But I'm going to start doing more. I always want to have one like investment project, like under construction or going on, or kind of like an underlying strategy that's being implemented. Because, until you own real estate or you buy your own house or you do some stuff, you don't have the perspective until you do it. So it makes me better as a broker to continue to broker, right? While I'm buying investments, selling investments, flipping stuff, holding stuff long-term, managing Airbnb. And that was one of the cool things that I would encourage other people to do, is the things that you do, try and get your compound interest on your experiences from them. Because my experience with this one deal, I sourced a deal. I found it. I did the acquisition for myself. I figured out the financing. I figured out the takeout. The swapping out the financing. I've learned invaluable lessons about Airbnb management. There's a lot of minutia in that, but all those things now, there's less thought that needs to go in them in order for me to deploy that strategy. So I've learned a strategy, and I feel more confident. And now I can move on to like higher level strategies and thoughts. So I'm going to continue to broker. That's my main thing. 75% of my efforts like on brokering, and then 25% is always going to be looking for good deals. And I'm always a buyer,
Yeah. So to me, if I sort of like recap that, is you have realized, and I think it's very smart, you realize that your one thing, your cash machine, which is brokering deals, is your main thing. And that's where your focus needs to be day in and day out. But you're sort of keeping like that third eye open for opportunities like this triplex and like the next triplex that you bought. You're sort of keeping this third eye open, that when the right deal comes across your plate and you don't have too many other, personal deals in the works, you're going to take it. You're going to knock it down, and you're going to figure out what's the best use of it, just like your development deals. And then how can you make that and turn it into more and more and more? And I think we'll come see a day eventually, Matt, where you're probably not a broker anymore. You probably got so many properties and you're just doing this full time. But I think it's really smart. It's sort of similar with how I'm 100% full-time wholesaling properties, and then the slam dunk deals, I'll flip them, or the slam dunk deals, I'll buy them as a rental. And then how can I parlay those into other deals? So really cool stuff, man. I think that's a really great mindset to have. So I want to ask you, in terms of like resources or guides or books or podcasts, is there anything that you sort of consume or have read a few times that's like really sort of helped you shift your mindset in a way that the listeners could benefit from?
Like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, I've learned more about like mortgage and finance, like drinking beers with people than I have from any like books, drinking beers and I could
direct networking.
Yeah. I could relate that to like proximity, being in proximity with people. I am an avid reader, like I like to, I haven't done it in years, but I listen to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts, and I think it helps you put your brain in or any real estate or finance podcast, put your brain into like the way you need to start thinking and analyzing and looking at things from multiple directions. The other thing that we didn't mention about my buy and hold was like, it's a really favorable zoning, like property, and it's a really good lot. So I have multiple exit strategies. I could sell it on a, inflated cap rate to someone that wants a turnkey Airbnb investment, or I could sell it to an apartment developer, or I could sell it to an apartment developer that just wants to land bank something that's going to carry itself and then develop it when he gets there. So when I look at stuff, I like multiple, like I don't want to buy something in like Spring Valley or whatever, because I don't want to be stuck with it and I don't want to go there every day. I want to have properties that have multiple exit strategies if possible, and they're like really good deals. Just because, and being, so I'm doing another deal right now and I'm getting more conservative on things. And I'm also getting a better grasp on like what things truly cost and how long they truly take.
Get out of 30 episodes we've done so far, I've asked everybody the same question. Everybody has a podcast or a book. You're the first person to say, you know what, like I'm a little bit different. I like sort of networking with people that are experts in their fields and sort of, taking some information for them over a couple beers. So I appreciate you being honest about that. We already talked a little bit about like where you're going in the future and how you want to take your investment strategy. So before I let you off the hook and ask you where people can find out more about you, if somebody's listening right now and let's say they're a real estate agent and they want to get more involved in investing, what's the number one actionable tip that you would give them?
You know what? I would say to that response, looking back at my life, and I've been doing a lot of kind of like reflections past couple of months, across the board, life is about like the go for it moments. There's moments in life where you just got to shut up and just go for it. You got to jump off the cliff and figure out the parachute on the way down. And I think people misinterpret that. And so I'll elaborate a little bit more. Step 2 is like, do as much research and sharpening of the saw to reduce your risk. So I'm not saying get into stupid things and like just go get a hard money loan and buy a property. I'm saying at some point you got to jump off the cliff. At some point you got to say, you got to go from the student to being the teacher. You just have to take action. Everybody's first time at everything sucked, right? So you just got to start doing it, and you got to kind of fake it till you make it. People like kind of hate on that term, but you got to show up, stand up tall and just go do it. Like go knock on the door, go call that person and just like thicken your skin. And like, I come from Irish background. So it's kind of like, oh, it's cold. Let's make it colder, or like, it's really like, rough and tumble, kind of like, you turn 18, they're like, well, get the fuck out of my house. Sorry, I don't know.
Nah, you cuss away, bro. But I feel you, man. Just go get dirty. Go get your feet wet. Go take that risk, but make it calculated. Do the research first.
Yeah, don't be a pansy about it. Like you got to just do it. Yeah, step up.
Yeah, I hear you. So, Matt, what's the best way for somebody to like follow you or reach out to you?
You can follow me on Instagram at matt.davies.sd, or you can call me, text me at 858-525-3131. I'm one of the few people that puts their phone number like on their signs and stuff. And I'm actually bummed because there's a lot of robocalls these days. And that's not for me putting them on a sign, but I do like when, I pick up my phone calls. That's how I build my business too. Pick up your phone, talk to people, return it. So Yeah. Call me whenever.
We'll link Matt's Instagram in the show notes. We probably won't put his phone number in there. So if you really want to call him, you'll just have to rewind and listen to that. But we'll put his Instagram in the show notes. And Matt, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thanks, guys.
All right, that's it for today's show. Listen, I really appreciate that you're taking the time out of your day to jump on, listen. Maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're driving. And if you're getting a ton of value like I am with having fun with this, I would really appreciate it if you just leave me a 5-star review, write a couple sentences. I read them all. If you want to tag your name, I can give you a shout out. We're growing fast and just having a ton of fun. And so I'm looking forward to releasing the next one. I'll see you on the next show.